RocGrowth Candids, where we hear from the people who are committed to a successful Rochester. I'm your host, Diana Pilatus, and our guest today helped lead two branches of government for the City of Rochester. On my left is Jeremy Cooney, who is the Chief of Staff for Mayor Lovely Warren. In this role, he serves as a senior advisor to the mayor, manages the city's intergovernmental affairs, and has direct oversight of the mayor's office and Rochester Public Library system. I did not know that. Before this, Jeremy was in a lead role at the YMCA of Rochester, was an aide to Congresswoman Louise Slaughter in her office. A fun fact, Jeremy was an unpaid intern in the mayor's office exactly 10 years before he was made Chief of Staff in 2014. Andrea Guzzetta was appointed Chief of Staff to the Rochester City Council in January 2010. In this role, she serves as an advisor to the 9 council members and manages the City Council office and legislative process. Previously, she served the city as an executive staff assistant to and confidential aide to Mayor Bob Duffy, and during the Johnson administration as an executive staff assistant to the deputy mayor. So these are two folks who have been around and know about these two branches of government and know about the city and how it works. So thanks to both of you for being with us, and thanks to all of you for being here. With so much change and development going on in the city, help us understand the separation of powers and how your offices work. Say with something like, since we're on that one, the Parcel 5 project. It was talked about for years. How will an idea through something like a request for proposal or an RFP become reality? Do you want to start? How somebody
Sure.
comes, yes, how it
Sure.
begins.
Well, the council process kind of happens at the later half. Initially, the city sends out an RFP, proposals come in to the administration. They have a team of people, depending on the project, with certain expertise that evaluate and make a selection. They then send that selection to the mayor. The mayor, once she approves it, then sends it in legislation to the council office. Once the council has it, they then ask questions of the mayor and the administration in terms of how this particular proposal was selected. Sometimes, depending on the size and the impact, I'm sure Parcel 5 will absolutely have one, there will be what we call a work session where the administration comes and presents to the council, and then once all of the questions have been answered and it gets voted out of committee, then at a council meeting, it gets voted on and approved, and then it goes from there.
Yeah, you nailed it. So I think the important point is that there's a process.
Right.
That this is not an arbitrary decision that's just made by the mayor or a certain staff member. It has to go through many stages. So a lot of times in government, we kind of look at ourselves and we say, why is this taking so long? And I'm sure you feel that way too. And that's because to protect the public interest, we have a process to follow. And it's the same process for Parcel 5, and to your question, Diana, is the same process that we follow for any economic development process. So it starts with our experts in the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. Some of them are here tonight. And they go through and use their background in education and their experience with seeing a whole range of projects to do the due diligence for that. And so they do that, and then that kind of kicks off the entire process. So really, by the time it gets to the mayor's office and then gets translated to city council, there's been months sometimes of vetting.
Sometimes years, right?
Yeah, sometimes years. Or it goes back and forth. I mean,
Right.
Parcel 5 is a great example of that, right? Parcel 5 is a really high-profile project. It's in the middle of our downtown. It's an incredibly important piece of land. We all recognize that. We started this back when you were in the mayor's office under the former mayor. And so we want to make sure we get it right. We're committed to making sure that we listen to the experts and listen to the citizens and making sure that we come up with an idea and a plan that you think council will agree to. And so right now we're still in that vetting process. Before we got here tonight, Andrea knows this, I stopped up to her office afterwards and I said, where are we in this process? We got to, give some dates and specifics. And what I was told by the people who have the real power, which are the departments, they said, Jeremy, don't commit to any dates, but we are looking at an early 2017 process, which would then come to the mayor's office. The mayor would have her own set of questions. And if you know Lovely Warren, she's a lawyer at heart. and she's all about questions all the time. And so she'll ask me a bunch of questions, and I'll ask other people a bunch of questions, and then it will get over to Andrea's desk, and she'll be able to guide it through the council process.
So when are we part of the process? And how much of a role do we have in that?
I think, and Andrea, you can jump in from the council's perspective, but I think this is, in Parcel 5, it's a unique example because we've seen something happen differently, right? The public has been involved from day one, right?
Different than like the inner loop,
Very different,
which was
right?
years in the making.
Correct. And so the public has weighed in at the developer stage, right? And, Ken's here, and some of the other developers who proposed ideas for Parcel 5 made it a very public and inclusive process outside of government. So before they even submitted their proposals to the mayor's office, it started with, we think this is, got some community support, and we think this is a really interesting idea, or we've heard from this young professional group, or we've heard from these merchants, and this is why we're proposing what we're doing. And I think that's different than other economic development project ideas. And probably because it's a really important piece of land. So I think that's great. And so there was some citizen input up front. Now it's going through that due diligence phase. And then there will be citizen input through the council process.
For city council, this is true of any item of legislation. The night of a council meeting, our council meetings start at 7:30. They're always on a Tuesday, but the Tuesday of the month varies, so I can't tell you it's always the second Tuesday or anything like that.
Check out the website, right?
Right. But before the council meeting at 6:30 is a meeting what we call Speak to Council, and the public has the opportunity to come in and speak to the council about anything before them, whether it's that they're supportive of it, they want this tweaked a little bit, they're not supportive. So this citizens really have the opportunity to weigh in all the way up until the night of the vote. So it's a pretty open process.
That was probably very apparent for the Charlotte Pier. There were a lot of Charlotte residents who weren't happy about what was first proposed, correct?
That's correct. So you're talking about the harbor.
The harbor,
Yeah.
right. Is there a true master plan for all these development pieces for the city? Is that something
There's
that?
a comprehensive plan for the city, but you can't really say what's gonna come into each parcel just because we don't know what we're gonna get for RFPs. Even with the inner loop, we sent out the RFPs, but we didn't know what would or wouldn't come back, or if only one parcel would get proposals and not all 5. So you really depends on what comes into us also.
How do you find out about an RFP?
Well, they're always on the website.
Yep.
The larger ones, often there's a press release or a press event component around them. And for the, not development, but for supplies or services, that kind of stuff, you can actually get on a list through our purchasing office, where then if something is going to RFP, you'll automatically be notified of it. But you can always check the website, they're all listed.
I think the question that you asked about planning is important, because I think this is where cities are learning that plans, have a role. A lot of times people go through these big processes, come up with plans, have a binder, stick it on a shelf, and that's the end of it, right? And I think that's something that we don't want to have happen here. So we are literally in the middle of what we're calling the Rochester 4.0 plan. There's been 3 plans beforehand. We're not redoing Renaissance Rochester 2010. We've probably heard about that 2010 plan. We're not going to redo all that. We're just going to update it. There's no point in spending taxpayer dollars and all this energy on changing a plan which really hasn't been fully executed yet. So we want to continue to work on the Renaissance 2010 plan, but update it to meet the needs of citizens today. So that's undergoing right now.
And what's part of that plan? What are some things we can see? Are things happening right now?
Yes, so we have a number of citizen advisory groups involved. We have the Mayor's Advisory Council, which I think is about 20 members now. Mayor chairs that. And then there's a bunch of community forums. In fact, we had one on downtown a couple of weeks ago that had maybe 30, 40 members of the community come out and give ideas for what they wanted to see on Main Street or what they wanted to see in having amenities for downtown. And all of those plans and each quadrant, right, get put together and thought about. We've got some help from Bergman Associates and Highland Planning. We're helping us kind of think through these issues, put this together, and there'll be a draft that will be released in the spring of 2017. And then there'll be a public input process for that draft. So we'll publish it. allow some feedback, and then go and do a final version, which will come out in the fall of 2017.
But it all doesn't mean anything unless we have everybody, wanting to live here and there
Right.
being jobs for people to
Right.
do. Where does that all come into everything?
For the see, I'm in a very different role than Jeremy is, so I can't say exactly, that the council, it's just a different role. It's hard to explain, but I think for the mayor, and I don't speak for her, but I think one of her main focuses is economic development and bringing jobs here and keeping young people here as well and creating opportunities for people.
Right, I mean, Andrea, you were the chief of staff for city council when Mayor Warren was then city council president
Yes.
Warren. And so a lot of the themes she talked about as city council president, she's brought over to her
Absolutely.
executive role as the mayor. And so as her chief of staff on the administration side, you probably heard our tag, right? City Hall employees here will know more jobs, safer, more vibrant neighborhoods, and better educational opportunities for families in the city of Rochester. Everything we do has to fit into one of those three buckets. And so if it doesn't have anything to do with one of those things, it's not on the mayor's priority list, right? And so more jobs is probably what we hear about the most often, right? We talked about opportunities for all of our citizens to participate in the economic recovery of the city, and that directly impacts decisions about economic development projects. So when we talk about Parcel 5, not only do we want to have, as an example, Diana, not only do we want to have something that's an activity generator, right? Gets more people onto our main street, more pedestrian foot traffic
Right.
going to retail opportunities on Main Street after hours, so that when we walk out of here tonight, right, and you see a tumbleweed going down in front of the YMCA, right, that's not what we want, right? We want a vibrant community and nightlife in downtown. So that's one part of the equation, though, right? The other part of the equation is how can all of our citizens who live in the city of Rochester benefit directly from whatever gets placed down there. And if it's job creation, that's something that we get really excited about, right? Is new industry. It doesn't have to necessarily be an office. It could be anything, right, from an entertainment venue to hotel to a residential spot, right? It could be a park that has opportunities for employment and stands. We just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to not only enjoy it, but also benefit from it so they can provide for their families and make a more vibrant community for all of us.
I mean, why did you guys stay? I know you went to school at Brockport, right?
I finished at Brockport, yes.
Mhm. And Jeremy, you went to?
Yeah, I went to Hobart and
Hobart, and
Geneva,
then to William, and then to Albany, right?
Albany Law, yep, and then came back.
I just think it's all about experiences that people have initially, either out of school or when they are doing internships, if they go to school locally. For me, I mean, I come from a very close-knit family, so in all reality, I probably wouldn't have left anyways.
They wouldn't let you leave.
Right, it would not have been an option. Right, she knows. It was not an option. But I did an internship for the Democratic Party locally my senior year of college, and that really was the foundation for my future. And I really think because of that experience, that's really what helped me put down roots and stay here.
Yeah, and I love New York, right? As a kid, I worked in the Adirondacks in the summer, and I love visiting New York City, and I went to school in the Finger Lakes, and then I went to law school in the state capitol, right? So I think that this state has so much to offer. Obviously, my family is here, and that's where it was a big draw for me to come back. But the quality of life, right? This is what we always hear. Quality of life in Rochester is just terrific. There are things that we could do better. We'll talk about those probably tonight.
Yes,
but,
yes.
but there's also a great, I have a house in Highland Park. I have a car that I can drive to work that takes me under 10 minutes. I've got a bike that I can go along the canal, which I enjoy 3 months out, or 3 months out of the year, 3 seasons out of the year,
Well,
right?
it might be 3 months.
40 and slip on that one, right? But
Depends.
there, and then we have world-class artistic opportunities. Across the street, we've got the Eastman Theater, and then we've got an amazing downstairs cabaret,
I
right?
know,
That here, I
right.
was telling Andrea when we were waiting to come on here, I went to School of the Arts, right? And we had some of our performances here as a high school student. So this is such a special place to be in tonight. So I think that's the reason why I chose to come back to Rochester. I had lived in Washington, I had lived in Albany, And being back here is just really special.
And there's a thing. So you understand what needs to get done. So let's talk about some of the other things that would draw people here, want to keep people here. What are you guys working on that you think is really something special? That could be like a Boulder that draws people out there, or Charlotte, North Carolina, or Boston. A lot of people like to go to Boston.
Well, go ahead.
I really think what's going to be done at the inner loop, and then also whatever it is that is done in Parcel 5, along with all of the housing, the residential that's going on downtown, I think that's going to really be the catalyst that kind of re-energizes and gets it back to how people remember how it used to be. I think we're kind of on the cusp of getting back to how it used to be, where there's a lot going on downtown, and you want to come down with your families, and you want to go shopping, and you want to live downtown, work downtown, and with all the developments that are coming, it's a really exciting time, I think.
There's a lot going
A
on.
lot
Maybe
going
the
on.
monorail will be back. Did you guys see that today?
I saw that today. I saw that today. Well, so speaking of Midtown.
Yes.
Here's a fun fact. So in Midtown Tower, Tower 280, right? Almost 100% commercial space has been leased. 100% of all the commercial space has been leased. Bergman obviously is now there. Bronca's coming in, right? It's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Of the residential units, this blew me away.
Yeah.
In single digits of units available left.
Mhm.
88 Elm Street, which if you haven't seen it, is just unbelievably gorgeous. All glass on the back facing. I walked out of the Sibley building this afternoon, and I just kind of jumped in. It looks, wow, they're putting the glass in. It looks gorgeous. It's going to be lofts and residential residential units are right there, kind of abutting Parcel 5. That's getting a lot of interest. So things are happening in Midtown that that weren't happening
Yeah.
even just 3 years ago.
And in neighborhoods like Up Atlantic with Three Heads and
Yeah.
Nosh, and then you have College Town, and then you have, it's really amazing what's been going on.
Yeah.
All the way down to Charlotte.
Mhm.
Why did you guys get involved? You had that taste of politics or being in service. What drew you to that?
For me, initially, I really enjoyed the politics and the campaigns. I loved it. And then when I went over to the city, it was just an opportunity for me to really give back to a community that I love. I love it here. And when people say, oh, it's this or it's that, I kind of want to tell them, well, go move and see if you can buy a house and if you can get to work and, be able to park your car without paying $500 a month in a garage. So for me, being able to give back and make it even better for the people who are here now, the next generation, that's why I wanted to stay. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, I
You
grew up.
got
I
the
grew
both
up.
of
I
them.
grew up in the city. I
Yeah.
grew up, in the South Wedge before it was trendy and cool. But now it's trendy and cool, and I live there now, and I love it. But it's a great opportunity, and we have a mayor who is under the age of 40. That's pretty awesome, and who's thinking differently about how a city operates, who's open to new ideas, who has a 6-year-old daughter, who's struggling with educational issues the way other families are struggling in the city, who travels the world and says, why can't we do that here in Rochester? And ask that question. And that's a kind of environment I want to be in, is a place that is innovative and thinking differently. We have an office of innovation. It's like an R&D office for our city, right? And
Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs.
a lot
out
of
there,
entrepreneurs,
inventors.
a lot of ideas. How do we study, research, use data in a new way? How do we take models that are working in other cities and bring them to upstate New York and apply them here? So this is an environment which is ripe for shaping. There's a lot of momentum happening here. We've got great private sector partners, but we also have a government that's willing to think differently. And I think that's very unique, especially when you think about Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, Yonkers. You drive down the thruway, there's innovation happening right here in Rochester.
Could we talk a little bit about, because the poverty level, we're fifth in the country,
Yeah.
the worst, the highest. Does that hold us down? It must, and it must hold us back from being even greater than we could be.
I agree. You can't be a Rochesterian and not identify with poverty, right? The mayor has said that you can live your whole life in this community and not see the level of poverty that exists. I mean, we literally have the proverbial train tracks where you drive from one side of the city to the other and it's a different world, and that is unacceptable.
And it's been the inner loop, that
Right,
that
right.
the crescent
The moat,
area. that
right,
brings
right,
us-
exactly.
So,
I mean,
and that keeps a lot of folks from coming downtown, the folks who live in the suburbs. They
Yeah,
think-
I mean, there's a perception there, right? We know, Andrea and I fight this game every day. There's a perception battle, right? Downtown is incredibly safe. Let's get real, right? Downtown,
Especially one
we
of
have
the
a
safest
substation
areas.
2 blocks away from here
Right.
in downtown, right?
Right.
It's safe. I wish it wasn't as safe, right? Because there'd be more people down here, right? But I mean, it literally is the safest place in the city of Rochester is Main
Yeah,
Street.
right.
And so if we can battle that perception game and allow people to realize that other than the Jazz Festival or the Fringe Festival, downtown's a cool place to hang out, whether they're going to Salinger's or whether they're going into some of the new art venues or galleries that we have popping up or participating in First Fridays, right?
Right.
Come down here, I guarantee you that you will get excited about something. And Bronco's a great example of that, right? So Bronco's coming into Tower 280. You're gonna have, seeing people have someplace to go at night, other than Dinosaur Barbecue, right? And we got Starbucks opening at the Hyatt.
At the height, yeah, I was going to say about what's
Yeah.
happening on Main Street itself. We just
lot.
have a couple
lot.
of minutes. So
A
that's
lot.
you're talking about Starbucks coming into Hyatt, the Hyatt
Yeah.
being redone.
Yeah, 22 new jobs.
Right?
Yep, 22 new jobs.
So is that whole area going to get a facelift along with it on the other side of the street? Because I think that's what
yes.
people think about when
Yeah.
they're not down here, because there is so much happening. But
It
that's,
can't
is
happen
that part
overnight.
of this,
It
is
can't
that part
happen
of the
overnight, but yeah,
process? As we're
absolutely.
talking about something going out and what's somebody going to do with those buildings that are there now?
So I'll talk about the 3 years that Mayor Warren's been in office, right? So we see the Hyatt under new ownership, $17 million being invested right now in external and internal renovations. First floor retail, full Starbucks operation being going in. Starbucks is a national corporate brand. They don't just come if they don't see potential in an area, right? We have young developers like Patrick Dutton, who's a good friend of mine, he has been for years, who is buying up those buildings across the street, right? And working with new businesses like CGI to think differently about how they want to develop the area, not just for their own employees, but for the community at large. The Midtown where the monorail that I grew up going to, I'm sure Andrea did too, right, is now transforming. And we're going to see something different, not in 10 years, like 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Right? The inner loop, which I used to take every day to work,
Right.
is transforming.
Can't do it.
We've got such
right.
talent. We've got such amazing talent in Rochester when you talk about development, right? Those of us here who remember the Strathallan before it was under the current ownership. I mean, it was a wonderful hotel in its heyday, but it really fell into disrepair. Now you can't get a room. It's like the #1 steakhouse in Rochester. I mean, it's a trendy, cool place to be. And by the way, those same 2 developers have combined into doing a new inner loop parcel, right? Home Leasing was putting up this amazing, if you guys haven't seen this Charlotte Square complex on Charlotte Street, it's beautiful.
yeah, that's
It's gorgeous. You drive by it, I can't believe how quick it's gone up, right? They're going to have a piece of the pie when it comes to inner loop. So they're bringing their talents to complement their housing component. And then we're finally investing in what I think is one of our untapped resources, which is the Strong Museum, right? Or the Strong, excuse me. The Strong is a beacon for families across the country.
Right, they come here.
They come here, and now we're going to build around it, and we're going to give people a reason to come visit the Strong, and then, by the way, stay near the Strong and go to an indoor water park and shop on first floor retail opportunities. And
So that you come for more than one day.
that's
You're
right.
staying a
Go
day
to
or
the Museum
two
and
go to
Science
the
Center while
zoo
you're
and
here,
go-
or walk over
go
to the
down.
Memorial Art Gallery.
Right,
Right.
do all those things. Thank you, everybody. I think we have to stop just, but they'll be here for a few minutes to take more questions, and we really appreciate how passionate you are about this, because I think we are all committed to Rochester. So thank you very much. Thank you so much to our guest, Jeremy Cooney, Chief of Staff for the Mayor, and Andrea Guzzetta, who's Chief of Staff for City Council. And thank you. Make sure to watch. We're on RocGrowth.com, correct?
Yep. we'll be-
RocGrowth.com.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Awesome.